I'm going to walk you through the Lucky 7 method of annotation with clearances. It begins with looking at the title. You can see that a clearance is something that you get when you get official permission to do something. You have clearance to land. Clearances is also about sales, but that doesn't seem to fit in here. And this is about his mother, Margaret Kathleen McCann Heaney, who was born in 1911 and died in 1984. Step 2 is to look at the basic sense. We can see here that's the who, what, where, when, and why. She is his mother, and the you is a sort of more generic. What is the thing that's been taught? How do you split a coal block? And it's what her uncle has taught her. So her uncle taught her, and then she taught Seamus Heaney. And then this is a story that goes back even further than her uncle. This would be his mother's grandmother's story about being a young married woman and being called a traitor for marrying outside of her faith uh, during the conflicts between Catholics and Protestants. Let's move on to section 3. Section 3 is the paraphrase, not section 3, but step 3 is paraphrase. And step 3 has to do with looking up words that you don't know. And a coal block, for instance, is used for fuel, and it's very big, and you have to cut it into smaller chunks so that you can use it in the fire or use it in the stove. The grain of the coal black here, that you can see it like you see grain in a wood, and it has to do with the lines, and so if you have to examine something very carefully. This word alluring is interesting. Alluring is usually mysteriously attractive, and wondering, well, what makes that hitting of the coal block so attractive? And co-opted has to do with being assimilated, perhaps like the Irish, and obliterated means destroyed. And as we went down coal block again and facing the music. To face the music means to confront the unpleasant consequences of one's actions, but it also has to do with the music of poetry and language. And he's being asked how to listen here. And we talk about the linear black. So the coal block has these lines that run through it. That's the grain. But this also makes me think that he's talking about carving out poetry as well. Next section is part 1. It's the first sonnet from this poem. A turncoat is a traitor, has to do with the Catholics and the Protestants again. A trap is a carriage that's drawn by a horse and a pony, but I think it also has to do with that idea of being caught like an animal or caught in a trap. A gauntlet is something that is a way of punishing somebody in the military, and the person who did something wrong would have to run between 2 lines of soldiers who would all take turns beating the stuffing out of somebody. The brae is a hillside along the river. Mass is a Catholic church service. And a Lundy, this is where it gets interesting. A Lundy is a traitor, and it's used by Protestants as a term of abuse to describe a traitor to the loyalist to Great Britain, or Unionist cause. And so that's what makes me think that the great-grandmother was a Protestant who married a Catholic. And convert has to do with converting to Catholicism, and exogamous bride, I'll have to look up how to say that, which is marrying outside your community or your clan. A genre piece is like a genre painting, and it's about emphasizing domestic life, and we go on to more domestic life here. Silver and Victorian lace, these are sort of more usual legacies from mothers. This is silverware made from sterling silver, silver serving pieces, lace linens for the tablecloths. And then we have this exonerating and exonerated stone. To exonerate means to absolve from blame, to absolve from wrongdoing. So you can see, even though there are some pretty simple words here, there are quite a few that have to do specifically with the cultural context that we had to look up. Let's go on to step 4. Waiting for step 4. Here we go. Step 4 has to do with looking at the use of language. And so one of the things I did when I was looking at the use of language is I marked all of the sentences. So this first tercet is one long sentence. And then the next sentence uses the next tercet and then some of the third tercet. Notice that he's using a command to teach me how to listen. This reminds me a little bit of the opening of the Odyssey. Sing in me muse and through me tell the story. And notice that, so we have 3 sentences in 3 tercets. The sonnet here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 kind of sentences, but 2 of them are fragments. And they're of varying length. Some of them are very short again. And notice again, we have these commands. Call her, for instance. And in terms of the language, so generally it's a conversational style, concrete diction, but again with these terms that we have to look up that are specific to the cultural context. Lundi and turncoat, and exogamous bride, exonerating and exonerated. That XXX there makes me wonder what's going on. As we move on to step number 6, so I've added a few things to step 5 here. Oh, step 5 has to do with looking at the patterns. So I'm looking at the patterns and I notice there's all this repetition of teaching. Taught, 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 teaching. And this whole idea of what's passed down from one generation to another generation is in here. And I'm curious about, and this is about the skill and the legacy, which makes me think a lot about digging in some of the other poems that we're going to look about, what he learned from his family. This tension here between the past and the present, this cobble that was thrown 100 years ago keeps coming at me. And then notice the strong verbs here, jerks and whips and trap, and this mass at a panicked gallop. Now, sometimes I must confess we were running into church because we were late, but this is about going to church and having people throwing stones at you because they're so angry at that betrayal. And then here we have this contrast between the lace and the stone, between the exonerating and the exonerated. Here is, so we've moved on from step 5, and we're moving on to step 6. And step 6 is we're beginning to look at the effective form. Oh, I want to talk a little bit about the moment. This is part of this moment, the movement, and the message. The moment here is the mom is teaching an essential family lesson. And the movement is between past and present, Protestant and Catholic. And the message is you don't have to keep this painful division. All right, let's talk about the effective form. We have 3 italicized tercets introducing the legacy of dealing with these challenges. And in this form, there are some close rhymes, split and right, blow and echo, and then listen and loosen, black and block. And notice that it's not a regular rhyme pattern. As I was counting out the syllables, it's generally between 8 and 11 syllables in each line, but there's not a clear rhythm pattern. Close rhymes, varying line lengths. The sonnets are, of course, 14 lines long, often written in blank verse or actually in rhyming iambic pentameter. Again, the syllable length varies from 6 to 11, so he's not using a sonnet in that way. There is a rhyming pattern, though. If you notice, go and brow, close, stone and on, close, trap and gallop, just ending with that P, Sunday and Lundy. Maybe it rhymes better in Irish, I don't know. Bride, side, pretty clear. And then, but peace isn't rhyming with anything. Peace, roughly with lace though. Peace and lace, gone and stone. And again, this might rhyme better in Irish than it does here. But the effective form is really this setting up this family history and the Irish troubles, and the rhymes show progression, pattern, and repetition. So as we put all this together, we get down to step 7. So the sounds of, this is the legacy of survival and pain and conflict in family and in the community. And the sounds of splitting coal is like crafting poetry, that there are skillful ways of handling challenges that you learn from your family, and that holding on to the past gives strength, but it also bitterness.